Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Food History Happy Hour. Today we are going to be talking about a whole bunch of different things. We'll be talking about January holidays, of which there are many. We'll be talking about birthdays, because this is my birthday month. We're going to make a pink drink, the Belmont Cocktail from 1917. As you can see, my library behind me is unfinished. You may have heard my sad tale of a broken bookshelf. I put two of them together back there, but the third one had chunks broken, so I have to send it back. So I'm incomplete. Hi, Glenn and Carla. Thanks for visiting. You can see one of my cool, if I lean the right way, one of my cool Christmas presents back there. That little vintage looking radio is actually an actual FM radio and a Bluetooth speaker, which is super fun. So I thought I'd put that up. Hi, Mary. Welcome. So yeah, it's been kind of a crazy year already, and we're only halfway through the first month of 2021. Hi, Eleanor. Thanks for joining. So we can talk about that if you want to too, but I thought we would start with making this cocktail. So because it's my birthday month, I wanted to make something fun and pink. Those of you who may have been following Food History Happy Hour for a while, thanks, Heather. It's not till the 26th, but I thought we would celebrate tonight. Those of you who've been watching Food History Happy Hour for a while know that I often inadvertently make pink drinks, so I thought we'd make one on purpose tonight. So the Belmont Cocktail is from the 1917, I want to say, keep wanting to call them cookbooks, but they're really like cocktail recipe books, Bartender's Guide. It's Recipes for Mixed Drinks by Hugo R. Enslin, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I don't know much about it. It's gin, so I'm going to be using my favorite Blue Coat, raspberry syrup, sorry, it's crowded on my desk, and cream. So you know it's going to be pink, which I'm very excited about. So the recipe is kind of a little not super straightforward. It calls for 2/3 gin, 1/3 raspberry syrup, and a pony of cream. So we know a pony, that's a bartending measurement, that's an ounce, right? Which is slightly less than a jigger. A jigger is usually 1.5 ounces. Hi, John. Thank you for the birthday wishes, everybody. So I was debating, should I go, it's basically 2 parts gin, 1 part raspberry syrup, and then a pony of cream. But it doesn't give me measurements. So do I do 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of raspberry syrup, and 1 ounce of cream? That's kind of where I'm headed. I don't really want to do 3 ounces of gin. It's kind of a lot, even for a birthday drink. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of raspberry syrup, and 1 ounce of cream. I'm going to shake it over ice. I already have my ice in my cocktail shaker. So we're going to start pouring. If you are cocktailing along, you should say in the comments what you're drinking. So again, if you're just joining us, we're making the Belmont Cocktail, which is gin, raspberry syrup, and cream. It's going to be very pink, and I'm excited about that. So it's 2 parts gin to 1 part raspberry syrup, and then a pony of cream, but we're just going to do everything in ounces. So we're going to do 2 ounces of gin, this is American gin, Blue Coat, which is not quite as dry as like Plymouth or, sorry, London Dry Gin. I'm confusing my gins. And then raspberry syrup, for whatever reason, was an incredibly popular ingredient in late 19th and turn of the 20th century cocktails. I don't know why, it just was. So we're going to do a whole ounce of raspberry syrup, which means this is going to be pretty sweet, but that's okay because I like sweet drinks. I have a sweet tooth. Ooh, Elizabeth has no gin or raspberry syrup, but she has some raspberry blackberry infused brandy and cream. That sounds like it would make an amazing cocktail. You should do something with it. John is having an old fashioned with almond syrup. That sounds fantastic. And Rosemary's having white wine. Very good, Rosemary. And Mary's drinking water. I do have cold seltzer on the side because I do get thirsty talking for an hour. All right, so we're doing our pony of cream, which is an ounce. And again, this is the Belmont Cocktail from 1917. Gin, raspberry syrup, and cream. Shaken over ice. And hopefully it's going to be nice and pink. Ooh, very cold. Oh, it's a very pale pink, you guys. I was hoping for something a little more electric, but I suppose I should have picked a better raspberry syrup. Wow, I hope this fits in this cocktail glass. All right, I'm going to leave it at that, even though there's probably more in there, because that is very full. Okay. All right, so this is the, you can barely tell, but it is very pale pink. The Belmont Cocktail 1917, 2 ounces gin, 1 ounce raspberry syrup, and 1 ounce of cream. So we're going to see what it tastes like. I don't know if I'm a fan. That's too bad. I don't know if gin was the right choice, you guys. Yeah. I don't think I like it. Which is really sad. I think this is the first. I think this is the first cocktail I have not enjoyed on Food History Happy Hour. It's really ginny. And normally raspberries and cream would be a delightful addition to any cocktail. But no. I mean, it's okay. I'll probably keep drinking it anyway. The cream kind of like shaking over ice. They kind of whip up a little bit, which is nice, but yeah. Sad. Glenn asked that the modern day variant would be blue raspberry. Probably, I guess. I don't know. You don't see blue raspberry in too many cocktails these days. John, so John asked, is this originally from the Belmont racetrack? I have no idea. The sad thing about vintage cocktail books is they don't give you any context for any of the reasons why they have names. Would it surprise me if there was some relation to Belmont for horse racing? I'm pretty sure Belmont is one of the races that you need for the Triple Crown. But I can Google it quick, but I don't know. So it's like the names of these obscure cocktails. Don't always give you the history. All right, so the Belmont Steaks apparently has a recipe called the Belmont Jewel, which is bourbon, lemonade, pomegranate juice, and lemon garnish. Let's see, Mr. Boston has a recipe. That's gin, half and half, and raspberry syrup, but doesn't say anything about it. All right. Oh, wow. Here's one. All right. From the 1935 Old Mr. Boston Deluxe Official Bartender's Guide. Theirs calls for 2/3 of a glass dry gin, 1/3 of a glass raspberry syrup, and a pony of sweet cream. That sounds pretty intense, you guys. I'm really glad I only went with ounces. All right. So this is the Belmont Cocktail. Probably related to the Belmont Stakes. Not super clear. Not really getting better as I drink it, disappointingly. I think if it had some seltzer in it to cut the alcohol a little bit, like a gin fizz with cream, that might have been better. But the gin, the herby juniperiness of the gin with raspberries and cream is not as delicious as I thought it was going to be. Sadly. Good thing I have grapefruit seltzer to wash it down with. I planned ahead. Heather's doing the Pink Lady. What's in a Pink Lady, Heather? Despite having food history happy hour and doing all these vintage cocktails, I'm not a bartender or cocktail expert, so I don't know a lot of cocktail names. So you should tell us what's in it. All right, so January holidays. So we're in the new year. Huzzah. Sadly, not much appears to have changed. I know we were kind of hoping all that everything would magically change once 2021 arrived. It has not. In many cases, it has somehow gotten worse. Not really sure how that was possible, but here we are. You know, insurrection attempts, coronavirus also getting worse, more infectious. Hooray, I was in quarantine all this week because we had a possible exposure in my household that turned out to be negative. We found that out yesterday. Hooray. So I went to Lowe's this afternoon for light bulbs. That was like my adventure of the week. So not seemingly a lot to celebrate, but there are actually quite a lot of holidays in January. Most of them fairly obscure or kind of not celebrated widely in the United States. But I thought we would go over them because I feel like we need something to celebrate, besides my birthday. So, Heather makes her Pink Lady with 1.5 ounces of gin, 1/2 ounce of pomegranate juice, 1/4 ounce of lemon juice, a dash of simple syrup, and an egg white, which also sounds like a pink drink and probably more delicious than mine. Sadly. I'm going to try it again. Nope. Still bad. Still bad. God, what a waste of cream. All right, so I thought we would start with actual New Year. So, of course, in the United States, I did a little New Year's Eve food history happy hour. Thank you for those of you who showed up. It was very spur of the moment. And I think I mentioned this, but we didn't really talk about it, which is the Russian holiday of Novy God, which is the new year, right? December 31st and January 1st. Not always celebrated that way in the Russian Orthodox Church. So Novy God is kind of more a product of the Soviet Union because it is an entirely secular holiday, even though it has a lot in common with Christmas. It's not actually Christian. So with Novy God, or some people say Novy God, like Grandfather Frost, who is a tall bearded man in like a blue robe, comes and brings you presents, right? There's lots of really amazing food in Russian celebrations of the New Year. Presents for kids, right? Lots of similarities to secular Western Christmas, but 100% secular. not associated with Christianity at all. So no Saint Nicholas, right? There's Grandfather Frost. And very popular throughout Russia during the Soviet Union, and still continues to be practiced in Russia and some former Soviet countries, and with some Russian immigrants to the United States to this day. So that was kind of a cool thing. I have some friends actually who we can never convince to go out for New Year's Eve because one of my friends' mom is Russian, and so they celebrate Russian New Year with their family instead, which is kind of cool. The other big holiday in January, which we don't really practice in the United States, is Twelfth Night, which is the start of Epiphany, right at the end of the 12 days of Christmas. It's a British Christian holiday, primarily. There's a lot of food traditions around Twelfth Night, some of which have survived in some carols that are associated with Twelfth Night that we now associate with Christmas. But primarily there's Twelfth Night cake, which, like a lot of traditional British holiday cakes, are essentially giant fruit cakes with some variation. And then there's a lot of similarities with Twelfth Night and the Roman holiday of Saturnalia. So, for instance, baked into the Twelfth Night cake is like a bean or some other small token. So if you get that in your slice, you get to be kind of like king or queen for a day, and things get kind of topsy-turvy, right? Like a servant might be king or queen for the day. You know, so there's some kind of role switching going on, maybe a little bit of gender bending. That dates back to the Roman holiday of Saturnalia, which was like when everything was kind of flipped and reversed. So that's a fun holiday that happens in January. Another one, which I mentioned earlier, that I think very few people know about, in large part because it's not even practiced that much in Sweden and Finland anymore, but growing up in a very Swedish American and Norwegian American household, but particularly Swedish American, we celebrated something called Tjuegondag Knut, or as we pronounced it, Tjuegondag Knut, which is the 20th day of King or Saint Knut. And essentially it's the very, very tail end of Christmas. It's when there was like a decree basically to stop celebrating Christmas. So Swedes, and in some parts of Finland, Swedish influenced parts of Finland, Tjuegondag Knut, you dance around the Christmas tree, you eat up all the remaining Christmas goodies, any Christmas cookies left, candy that was used as decorations on the tree. You might eat your gingerbread house. You dance around the Christmas tree, you sing songs, and then you take all the decorations off the tree and throw the tree out in the snow. Right, so that's Tjuegondag Knut. Usually celebrated on or about January 13th. So we still have our tree up in our house, and we still have our Christmas lights on, but tomorrow, sadly, we're going to take everything down. We haven't had any snow for a while, which has meant that the Christmas lights, as much as I love them on our house, seem less celebratory and more sad these days. So we are going to take them down tomorrow. But that was a big one in my community growing up, to celebrate Tjuegondag Knut, or as my husband calls it, Sugary Dog Canoe, because he can't pronounce Swedish. So Hua or Shua in Swedish is 20th or 20. So, and dog is day. So Tjuegondag Knut is the 20th day of Knut. Anyway. Oh, I'm missing comments. Elizabeth says, 1 blackberry crushed with 1.5 teaspoons of white sugar makes about 1 ounce of my blackberry raspberry infused brandy, and about 2 ounces of cream is okay. But it's very light pink and it's too much brandy. In my opinion, can't taste the berry at all. I might try this again with some raspberry jam and only about a teaspoon of the brandy, because raspberries and cream sounds wonderful. Yeah, so I was hoping that this recipe was going to taste something like the sodas that we used to make at the little French patisserie I worked at in college, called French sodas, as opposed to Italian soda. So Italian soda is seltzer or club soda and flavored syrups. And then to make it French, you would add cream or half and half. That is very good if you want to do that. So if you're measuring like for this size, you have to put like that much syrup in the bottom and then fill it about to here with seltzer. And then you just add cream to taste and stir it up. That is also very delicious if you would like a non-alcoholic version of this sadly disappointing Belmont cocktail. Slightly less bad. Maybe all the gin was at the top. I don't know. Elizabeth also says, I wanted to make 12th night cake this year, but missed January 4th, 5th, and 6th. So I made figgy pudding instead. I have meant to make fruitcake. Food historian friend Anna Catherine sent me 2 awesome fruitcake recipes, and I just didn't do any of it. I haven't really done any baking lately. I made an apple crisp the other day. That's pretty much it. I made like kitchen sink oatmeal cookies, but I made them into bars last night because I was too lazy to make cookies. I just put a bunch of dried fruit and like chocolate and chopped pecans into my oatmeal cookie recipe. That's not a lot of energy for baking these days, guys. I don't know what it is. Yes, Amanda, that was at Nicole's. Amanda's one of my friends from Fargo. That's where we met. I met a ton of awesome people working at Nicole's Fine Pastry. Shout out if you're ever in Fargo, North Dakota, go visit Nicole's Fine Pastry. That place really refined my palate, got me unaddicted to chocolate, and re-addicted to fatty fruit pastry desserts. So you should totally go visit there if you ever find yourself in Fargo, North Dakota. Glenn, I'm very confused by your comment. Glenn says tomorrow is National Nothing Day and also the 10,000th of September 1993. The 10,000th National Nothing Day? I don't know what that means. Anyway. All right, so those are the Christmas, New Year associated holidays. I thought we would talk a little bit about some other holidays, including by request, although I don't think Anna Catherine is watching, Robbie Burns Day. Robbie Burns Day is the day before my birthday on Robert Burns' birthday, which is January 25th. Robert Burns being the celebrated Scottish poet, author of the very famous Auld Lang Syne, also a number of other very famous poems that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. But anyway, so the first Robert Burns Memorial Supper was held in July of 1801 on the 5th anniversary of his death, right? But people also celebrate it on his birthday. So basically, there's Scottish music, usually bagpipes. There's a welcoming speech. You eat some haggis. Somebody recites Address to a Haggis by Robbie Burns, right? And then you kind of hang out and have delicious Scottish dinner. But haggis and toasting and speeches and poetry are the main event, right? Lots of toasting. So for Scottish people and fans of Robert Burns, January 25th tends to be kind of like people have Burns suppers. You drink scotch, you eat haggis, you listen to bagpipe music, you recite poetry, and there's toasting. Sometimes toasting contests. I have never. Oh, yes. Okay, Eleanor corrects me that there is a procession of the haggis, not just eating it. Yes, there's lots of traditions around Burnside. I've never attended one. I've never hosted one. I'm not Scottish. I'd rather have Tjuegondag Knut, to be honest with you. But definitely I have friends who've hosted the parties before, and they sound fun. So Heather says Burns Night is my Super Bowl. So you go all out, huh? She said we're doing it outside by a bonfire this year with massive safety protocols in place. We'll freeze our tails off. And then she has the Scottish flag, a heart, a sheep, and a scotch emoji. Oh, yep, that sounds super fun. But like I said, I'd rather dance around the Christmas tree and eat leftover goodies and then throw it out in the snow, personally. So those are the major, kind of more popular national holidays that actually are not just kind of like made up national holidays. I did look up, just out of curiosity, if there were any holidays, national holidays around food today, and apparently today is National Fig Newton Day, which has a little bit of a fun history behind it. So Fig Newtons were first made in 1898 by a company that would eventually become the National Biscuit Company, also known as Nabisco, right? And so I think people were just experimenting with different biscuit and cookie recipes at the turn of the 20th century, and Fig Newtons have kind of persisted as this very popular but somehow mocked cookies since then. I like Fig Newtons because I like figs, but somehow in the 20th century they kind of took on an odor of old-fashionedness, right? They're like old lady cookies. Oh, Sandra says she's from Newton, Massachusetts. Is that where Fig Newtons are from? I didn't even look. I feel so bad. It doesn't say. Yes, okay. Yep, named after the city of Newton, Massachusetts. Wow, look at that. You learn something every day. Hi, Rita. Rita says it's National Bagel Day. I didn't know that. Not on my list of national holidays that I looked up. They were remiss. I don't know. Someday I'm going to have to look into, like, how do all these national food holidays get created, you guys? Maybe I'll look it up right now. Because that is something I've always been curious about. Like, seems like every single day there's some other food that has a national holiday behind it. Like, is it actually a national holiday? Was it like a congressional decree? How did they happen? So I'm looking right now. Okay, some were created by a presidential proclamation or resolution in the House or Senate. For instance, July 9th, 1984, President Ronald Reagan signed Proclamation 5119 declaring National Ice Cream Day. He also did National Frozen Food Day and a Catfish Day. Interesting. But yeah, it sounds like most of them are kind of just made up holidays by food companies. Shocker, marketing. Oh, okay. Glenn is introducing me to another holiday. He says, after your birthday comes St. Nino's Day. On the old calendar is January 14th. On our current calendar is January 27th. She's the patron saint of Georgia, the country of Georgia, not the state. Reputed to have brought Christianity to Armenia and Georgia in the 4th century. Interesting. So my birthday, the food holiday on my birthday, January 26th, it's National Peanut Brittle Day. So yeah, peanut brittle. I like peanut brittle. Who doesn't like peanut brittle? Apparently it doesn't really have a clear history. Probably an accident. Somebody cooked their caramel a little too long. Right? Could also be a variation on toffee. Nobody really knows. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and again, if anybody has questions as we're going through, feel free to drop them in the comments. The last thing I want to talk about was birthday history, because of course it's my birthday month. And so I thought that would be fun to talk about. So birthday celebrations are quite ancient. They date back to ancient Persia, ancient Egypt. Rome was apparently the first of the ancient world to celebrate like regular people's birthdays, but only men, because of course it's the ancient world. Apparently women's birthdays weren't celebrated until the 14th century, but again, history is kind of murky. And it's really not until the 18th century, possibly in Germany, again, not super clear, that people start celebrating birthdays with cake, usually children's birthdays. Now, using cake to celebrate things is super old, pretty much since we started making cake, which has kind of a different definition in the ancient world than it does now. So in the ancient world, cake was like a whole host of things, usually yeasted, right, or unleavened, like a little flatbread thing, often sweetened with honey or fruit, nuts, things like that. And then in the medieval period, like the Elizabethan period, most cakes were, again, yeasted. They're more like bread, like a lot of, ironically, Christmas breads from Italy, Germany, Scandinavia, England, not so much France, I think, but pretty much all of those countries have sweetened, yeasted bread with fruit, dried fruit and nut traditions, right? So that's what we kind of think of as cake for a long time. Then we start to get into the fruit cake traditions, which, as I said earlier, you know, like Twelfth Night cake, Christmas, fruit cake. In England in particular, there's simnel cake, which is associated with like Easter, Mother's Day time of year. So those are all like very dense, very sweet cakes, stuffed full of dried fruits and nuts. And I think a lot of that had to do with this kind of holdover from what was popular amongst the very wealthy, that as those items became cheaper, it kind of trickled down to lower classes and kind of retained this popularity long after the ingredients were less rare and more widely available. So in the medieval period, sweetening a cake with sugar, super expensive, super rare. Spices from Asia, again, super expensive, super rare. Imported dried fruit from the Mediterranean and the Middle East, again, super expensive, super rare. Candied fruits like citron. Citron doesn't grow in England. Citron doesn't grow in northern France or Germany. That has to be imported. So all these really expensive imported foods, you know, kind of all mashed together in this one amazing dessert. That's kind of how celebratory fruit cakes get started. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but fruit cakes of that style persist through to the 20th century, not just for Christmas, but also for weddings. Like you see in a lot of old cookbooks, wedding cake recipes are usually a dark fruit cake. By the end, like mid 20th century, that starts to kind of be like the groom's cake and the bride's cake. Again, this starts at the turn of the 20th century and really solidifies in the mid-century. The bride's cake is the white cake with the fluffy, you know, buttercream frosting or icing, fancy piped icing that's meant to be eaten the day of. And then the fruit cake or the groom's cake is like your souvenir cake that you took home with you. So all of that persists, and all of that has an influence on birthday cake because we start to associate cake of this type with big celebratory events, milestones, holidays and feast days, weddings, and then, predictably, births. But there's also a big influence in how cakes are made that makes birthday cake today what it is. So at the turn of the 19th century, we were starting to get chemical leaveners. So we no longer had to rely on yeast leavener or massive amounts of eggs. So in the 18th century, most cakes were leavened with one or the other, like sponge cake, genoise, things like that, that use eggs as the primary lift. They're very light and fluffy, which is great, but beating eggs by hand on a cold platter for like a half an hour to get them light enough, it's not something people really wanted to do on a regular basis. So the introduction of chemical leaveners made things much easier, and then the commercial production of those chemical leaveners, there were a whole bunch of them, I'm not going to go into them now, but by the mid-19th century, they became much more widespread. You get the more widespread use of biscuits and quick breads and, you know, baking soda or later baking powder leavened cornbread, things like that. That was also happening with cakes, muffins, gems, pancakes, you know, flapjacks, johnny cakes, all those fun things. And by the end of the 19th century, going into the 20th century, you were starting to get a lot of innovation in the types of cakes, right? Not just butter-based pound cakes or egg-based sponge cakes, but you were getting like velvet cakes, not just red velvet. They had white velvet cake, right, was a thing. You start to get a lot of frosting development, not just the hard frostings, the hard sauces that were designed to kind of like keep moisture in, right? But these soft, fluffy things. You get marshmallows get involved in frosting. You get buttercreams, all these sorts of, you know, burnt sugar, caramel frostings, all of these things. And so you start to get more and more emphasis in cookbooks and in everyday cooking on a woman's cooking prowess was illustrated through her desserts and primarily cakes. Pie is pretty easy to make once you figure out a decent pie crust, right? Pie doesn't take a lot of effort. But a 2 or 3 layer cake, you know, with all kinds of fancy ingredients, all kinds of fancy frostings, flavorings, that was like the wow factor. And I think that is why that type of cake comes to be so closely associated with birthdays, right? Birthdays are kind of a public celebration. They happen every year. If you have a big family, you have multiple opportunities. And there's no one style of birthday cake. It's very much individual taste, usually the individual taste of the person whose birthday you're celebrating, right? As a kid, you may have put in requests for birthday cake. My most common request was lemon poppy seed cake with lemon glaze. Not as a little kid, but, you know, like middle school, because I was kind of a nerd. So I had a bundt cake. That was my birthday cake. All right, Glenn is asking me a question. What does velvet mean in a cake? So velvet has to do with the texture of the cake, right? It's very fine crumb. It's very soft, very velvety, very light. That's a textural thing. In the 20th century, you start to get the development of chiffon cakes, right? So there's all different kinds of cakes happening. But velvet has to do with the lightness and the texture of the cake. Oh, hello, Kimberly. Thanks for joining us. So Kimberly says, the bottom and top tier of my 3-tier wedding cake was a fruit cake in Ireland, November 1999. So that weddings and fruit cakes still going strong there. And the tradition is you save the top tier for the first anniversary, keeping that fruit cake tier in the freezer. It gets very dry in the freezer over time. So that fruit cake in Ireland also has a layer of marzipan on top. Yep. Then it's covered in fondant. It's still a very important part of the festive season, Christmas time and weddings. Yep. That comes from those medieval, super rich people, great cakes. They would make these enormous cakes. You know, you have to have giant bake ovens that only enormous estates would have access to, right, to make these enormous cakes. Marzipan, another food of the wealthy in the medieval period because you need both sugar and almonds. The almonds had to be blanched and pounded. It's a very labor-intensive thing. Now you can just go buy it, but in the medieval period, you had to make everything yourself. So, yep, that's where that all comes from. Isn't it so funny how those traditions persist across the centuries? Like, who knows why we serve fruit cake at weddings? Well, that's why. Because in, 1300, It was really expensive. And it was like this show-off status thing to have fruitcake. So that's why we still serve it. Anyway, so birthday cakes and birthday parties, particularly for children, aren't really that much of a thing until the 19th century, especially the latter half of the 19th century. Cake has a big, range of development from over the course of that century. The cakes get lighter and taller and softer. You get the development of cake flour, which you can still buy today. Swansdown is probably the most popular variety. So everything is about whiteness, right? If it's a white cake, lightness. You want it very light, very soft, tender, textured. If you ever made historic cakes from scratch, you know that's not always the case. So basically, what you want is what modern box mix cake is, right? And so that's why those cakes are like that, because that was the ultimate goal of a lot of those recipes. And funnily enough, fun fact about box cake mix, which is what I'm sure a lot of people make birthday cakes out of these days. That's kind of cake I grew up having. Fun fact is that when they were first developed, box cake mix only required you to add water. But housewives, women who were baking didn't feel like that was real baking. So they adjusted the recipes that you had to add water, oil, and an egg, instead of having powdered egg and vegetable shortening already in the recipe. So that's why. And I'm not anti-box cake mix. I use box cake mix every once in a while because sometimes you just really want cake and you don't want to have to go out and buy one or make one from scratch. Yep, that's the thing about convenience food is it doesn't require a lot of brain power. So, any other questions? That was my whirlwind trip through January holidays and brief birthday history. I'm not doing anything special for my birthday at all. I'm actually giving a talk the next night, so I'll probably be putting the finishing touches on that. It's about history of macaroni and cheese, and I scheduled it for the day after my birthday so I could do the cooking demo for my birthday and have macaroni and cheese on my birthday. So that's my plan for my quarantine birthday. Even though I won't officially be in quarantine at that point, but traditionally I have a giant birthday party at my house and it's themed. So what are some themes I've done for? I've done a Star Wars theme, did a Hobbit theme one year. That was fun. I loved the Hobbit themed one. I like making themed food, in case people don't know that. My friend convinced me to do a white Christmas themed Christmas dinner, so I did, and then she had to be in quarantine, so we didn't actually get to eat it together. We ended up delivering it to her house. 2018, I did a Higgly birthday. Higgly is the kind of Norwegian version of hygge, or kusli is another one. So it was like a little cozy birthday, which was fun. What do we have? I'm gonna look. I keep like menu planning documents so I can look back and see what we did. We did mac and cheese and split pea soup with ham. Yep. And then I did I actually do this? I think I did. And then I did like snacky things. And I think I made crock pot hot chocolate, which was a really good idea. Well, does anybody have any other questions for me? If you came late, I made the Belmont Cocktail, which may or may not be connected to the Belmont Stakes horse race, which was gin, raspberry syrup, and cream, and it wasn't that great. Sadly, my first cocktail that I actually don't like, but I'm drinking it anyway, because why not? All right, Sandra wants to know what I did for the Star Wars theme party. That one was fun. Let me look it up here. It was a birthday brunch. So I did cinnamon buns for Princess Leia. And then I made some cookies. I made Wookiee cookies. So they're like oatmeal cookies, chocolate chip oatmeal cookies. And then I did like a little bandolier across them. And then I did Wampa macaroons, which are super cute. So they're little flat coconut macaroon cookies. And then I gave them little chocolate horns and eyes and little fangs. Because, of course, the Wampa is the snow monster from The Empire Strikes Back that almost eats Luke. I'm such a nerd, you guys. And then I also did Chewbacca hash browns with bacon bandoliers, right? Because he's the easiest one to recreate. And then I did Stormtrooper hard-boiled eggs. And something I called Yoda ears, which was I got spinach tortillas, and then I did like avocado and green salsa and cheese grilled. So it's just a half a tortilla, right? And then I did fruit lightsabers, which is just grapes on skewers. And then I made little cheese and cracker TIE fighters. So I bought hexagon crackers, and then I made little cheese cubes, and then I glued them together with cream cheese. And then the drinks were, I made blue bantha milk, which was milk with almond extract and sugar, and then a little bit of blue food coloring. And then I made something called a Tatooine Sunrise, which was orange juice with grenadine and maraschino cherries. So that was my very nerdy Star Wars birthday brunch that I put together. And Elizabeth, I did not use the Star Wars cookbook for the recipes. That was just a lot of Googling and Pinterest and just ideas coming out of my head. The blue bantha milk, you have to have blue milk for Star Wars anything, right? The Tatooine Sunrise is totally me. And I think I saw the TIE Fighter idea somewhere, maybe. The Yoda ears were totally me. But yes, it was fun. You know, normally I don't like parties where the food just is like in the shape of things that are the theme and not actually a part of the theme. But it's hard, you know, it's hard with Star Wars because they don't really eat in Star Wars, and they don't really talk about food in I mean, they probably do in the books, but not in the movies, which is what the focus was. The Hobbit one was much easier because it's like basically British peasant food, right? So anyway, so yeah, not a lot else to talk about. My library is still in progress. You can see I just piled a bunch of books on my my new one that I made. I am actually debating. So right now, my books, my historic cookbooks go from oldest to newest. And I'm debating doing it the other way around because those books are cooler and they would look cooler on video. But it's also close to the windows. So I'm like, do I keep the old books far away? Or do I get UV filters for my windows? I haven't decided yet. Anyway, once it's totally done, I am going to do a live stream tour of my library once it's all put together, which might be a while now since I can't get that. That bookshelf is now sold out, which I'm like, 2021. Anyway, we have about 10 minutes left. Anybody have any other questions or comments, personal anecdotes? Anything they want to talk about? I feel like I should make myself a birthday cake for my birthday because I love cake. But I don't know what kind. Any suggestions for what kind of birthday cake to make myself? Lay them in the comments. Oh, you guys, it's like separating out. I'm going to stop drinking that cocktail. We're switching to seltzer. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but the I think the reason why it started not tasting as bad is because all the gin went to the bottom. And the I don't know if you can see, Yeah, you can kind of see it's like clearer on the bottom. Yeah. Oh, Heather, no, nobody asked when cupcakes became a thing. Cupcakes, there's such a weird history to cupcakes. I haven't looked too much into it, but you see recipes in historic books, in historic cookbooks for cupcakes, but I think they mean literally like it's a reference to the cup measurement rather than baking them in cups, right? So that's going to bother me now that you asked that. I totally have to look it up. Because now I'm like, all right, so supposedly the first reference is in Amelia Simmons because she talks about baking a cake in small cups, which doesn't surprise me. But they're not really that popular, I don't think, really. I mean, it's so hard to tell because there's like tea cakes and then there's cupcakes. And so like the small cakes are very old, but things baked in muffin tins essentially yeah are more recent, I think. Yeah, now I have to look up the history of the tins, right, because that's how you find it out. Which it doesn't say. Anyway, there's like, so there's also like gem pans. So really all this tinware is proliferating in like from like the 1830s on, right? Tinware in American kitchens and American households exists in the 19th century or in the 18th century. It doesn't really become super popular until the 19th century. And then there's like tin everything. Like you can get any kind of pan, any kind of kitchenware made out of tin that you could possibly think of. So there also starts to be much more proliferation of like molded cast iron. So you get like the cast iron corn cake pans that are like look like a stick of corn. That's like mid 19th century. You start to get gem pans, which are similar. They're kind of like small muffins. Sometimes they're molded, right? But they're meant for like little savory muffiny things. You get popover pans, but like muffin tins, kind of an amorphous history, guessing mid 19th century. Hard to tell. I'd have to go look it up. But I think cupcakes really start to proliferate in the 20th century with kids' birthday parties because it's so much easier. It's like, here, Johnny, here's your pre-portioned cupcake in a little paper wrapper. Than making a big giant frosted cake and trying to slice it, and then kids trying to eat the slices, and you need forks and all kinds of stuff. So I think that's why cupcakes become popular. They really like take off in our more popular culture in the early 2000s as like a thing. People start having cupcakes for weddings. It's like everywhere, and a lot of it is because it is quite convenient. You don't have to cut it. They're very easy to bake. They're also very easy to overbake. So if you've ever had a dry, horrible cupcake, like I have had many, they look great. They've got way too much frosting. Like I feel like the modern cupcake incarnation is not a super great trend. Like the ones that look the best usually taste the worst. So, all right. So I have 2 suggestions for lemon cake. Elizabeth says lemon drizzle cake, and Rosemary says lemon poppy seed. Which, like, that was my favorite growing up. Maybe I will. Glenn says carrot cake became the traditional birthday cake for our family. Carrot cake was actually one of our wedding cakes because my husband and I both love it. So I actually had 3 different types of cake at my wedding. I made 2. Carrot cake, which was awesome, and then a chocolate sheet cake, like a cocoa cake, like a really moist cocoa cake with sour cherry preserves and whipped cream, and I stabilized the whipped cream, but not enough because it totally melted, and the cake was too moist, so that one was okay. And then some friends of the family made us this amazing giant yellow cake with like a cooked cream, like maple pecan cream filling, and then vanilla buttercream on the outside. That was amazing, and I'm so sad we did not save more of that cake. And we didn't save the top of our cake. Somebody put it aside, and then it got left out overnight because we didn't notice it was up on a shelf. So, but we did save cake meat on our anniversary, so we did. Anyway, I have to think now. I'm gonna have to peruse. I feel like one thing, even though I love to cook, one thing I have yet to master is a good homemade frosting. So I might try, if I'm feeling really ambitious, we'll see. I might try my hand at Swiss buttercream, which is one of my favorite commercial buttercreams that I have never made. So. Oh, yes, Elizabeth. There has got to be a 1950s thing. Baking cupcakes into flat-bottomed, like, sugar ice cream cones. Are they called cake cones? I can never tell the difference. Anyway, the ones that are baked, they taste like cellulose, basically, sweet cellulose, right? And then she'd frost them so they look like ice cream cones. That is a super cute idea and sounds like it's straight out of a 1950s magazine. That totally sounds like a thing. Oh, speaking of parties and theme parties, keep your eyes peeled on Monday on the Food Historian blog. I have scheduled a blog post that started out with me coming across some recipes by a somewhat famous person all about theme parties. So I have it scheduled to go up, and she's not that famous herself, but she's related to kind of a famous family. So that's going up on Monday morning. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. Should be pretty fun. It was interesting to research because there's not that much about her, even though her family is very famous. So anyway, any last questions before we're done for the evening? Oh yeah, definitely separating now. Sad. My first and only like failed cocktail. I had such high hopes, you guys. Okay. Well, I think I'm gonna be done. Hopefully your questions won't post after I stop this because there's always a delay. So thanks everyone for joining me for Food History Happy Hour tonight. I will post the blog post tonight, so if you want the Belmont recipe, I don't know, it wasn't that great, but if you want it, it'll be there. Along with a little bit of birthday cake and January holiday history. And we are going to do another one in February. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I will get it up soon. And yeah, thanks again for joining me. I will be 36 the next time you see me. And we'll see everybody in February. All right? Thanks. Have a good night.